I've made up my mind. I'm not going to be a German soldier.
Hello, my nakamtachi, this is JoyGirl, here to talk about the events of the recent One Piece chapter. This week's chapter is another fantastic addition to the raid on Onigashima. Overall, this chapter just has me super invested in so many different aspects of the raid. Even more so than usual, I'm getting increasingly excited to see all of the different fronts develop from a number of perspectives, such as the full extent of combat abilities, but most notably in terms of characterization. And if you'd like to hear more discussions on One Piece, then make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Now, before we get into the chapter itself, we do have the results of another Joyfleet artwork competition, where the theme this week was to draw any One Piece character with their awakened devil fruit abilities, and here are our winners. In equal second place, we have Irvin and Pukiyaki. Irvin envisions that the awakening of the Mera Mera no Mi will allow Sabo to turn everything into black flames, which brings to mind the Amaterasu Dojutsu from Naruto, and I would love to see this, especially if it means that Sabo's flames would become inescapable. And I thought the Mera Mera no Mi was an incredibly strong devil fruit already. Pukiyaki continues to bring the comedy with the awakening of Kaido's Ua Ua no Mi, and if you thought the Yonko was already threatening, you have another thing coming, because Kaido's awakening, which turns him into Ryonosuke, well, this is scary. Scary how good this is. And in first place we have Jiatsuki, and it seems that the manga paneling style of artworks continues, and we love to see it. I know many of us have been eagerly waiting to see the results of the challenge to the Shichibukai, and Jiatsuki answers this for us when it comes to Kobe and Boa Hancock, which seems to suggest that Kobe has fallen smitten with the Kuja warrior princess as a result of her awakened Mera Mera no Mi, but I'm not gonna lie, I think they're both falling more in love with Luffy and fangirl or fanboying over our rubber boy together. How does this relate to awakenings? Don't ask me, let's just congratulate our winners and express our gratitude for the awesome submissions each week. And now let's get back to the chapter. So chapter 1031 started where we left off last week, and we saw Law and Kid exhausted after their assault on Big Mom. Interestingly enough though, they don't seem to be as exhausted as the dialogue in chapter 1030 suggested that they would be, because it was indicated that after using their awakened abilities, which would essentially be their trump cards, that they would be completely wiped so that they would be effectively rendered useless afterwards. But in this chapter, after Big Mom got up, which really shouldn't have come to anyone's surprise, these two still seemed like they had some left in the tank, physically, but most of all mentally. And this is what I found most intriguing in this whole segment. These two supernova captains have very different motivations in their investment in this war. We see Law's drive in this chapter to survive and defeat Big Mom being that he needs to live if he wants to find out the history of the world and the meaning of the Will of D, and we've known of Law's motivation because we've seen him address this in the past, so his dialogue here is clear to us, but Kid's reason for taking down Big Mom is a source of intrigue I would like to see developed. And we got an inkling of Kid's motivation through Killer recently, but I'm just not satisfied that Kid's motivation is to become the future Pirate King. What I want to know is why. Is he one of the people that Roger inspired, or is there a deeper reason for this goal? What drives him to attain this title? Which of course is just another way for me to say that I'm really eager to see this guy's backstory. The reason for all of these questions is because we have a pretty clear idea on who will actually become Pirate King by the end of One Piece, and sorry Kid, that isn't you. But Kid as a character is becoming more and more interesting, so I'd love to find out more about his backstory, so that even if he doesn't achieve Pirate King status by the end of the series, maybe he has an alternative goal which could be fulfilled in some other way. In saying that, Kid certainly did give off some very Pirate King energy in this chapter, and this goes back to a comment that Garp made about Roger, that the late Pirate King didn't know when to run and retreat, which is a key part of battlefield victory. And though I'm not saying that Kid is comparable to Roger, seeing him in this chapter refusing to back down even if it costs his life showcases a character trait of someone worthy to rival the future Pirate King. And this is actually highlighted in many ways this chapter, even in an unexpected way, because Big Mom reveals a new ability where she can buff herself up and create more homies, but actually use her own lifespan to do so. And as terrifying as she is as Bigger Mom, this is what I would consider a small win for Law and Kid. Big Mom specifically says that she hasn't been hurt this bad in decades, and the two supernovas have forced her to resort to sacrificing 1 year of her own life. So as scary as this development is for the incoming continued battle, this is a sign that Big Mom can be made vulnerable vulnerable, and I have a feeling that it won't be far too long before the tough and tanky Empress of the Sea, as we currently know her, will be no more. And if that is the case, given that Luffy's victory over Kaido will be saved for afterwards, Kid and Law will have been the first characters to actually take down a villain of this threatening and influential scale in the series. And if a Yonko falls, it will really feel like we're one step closer to the end, which is still a really weird idea to imagine. All I can say on the Drake and Apu front is that I would like to see more. This segment between the two certainly did raise intrigue as to what they'll do, because I'm wanting to see more of their combat abilities and the culmination of their face-off. I need Drake to use more of his hybrid form so we can see the full extent of his ability, and for Apu, I'm interested in how he'll adjust to Drake figuring out how his devil fruit works. Seeing more of Apu scheming also raises further questions about his character. In chapter 1030, I was surprised by his unexpected character trait of ambition to become a conqueror, which seems to somewhat continue in this chapter. His attempt to deal with other characters to come out on top suggests that his allegiance is more complicated than just allying with the winning side, although I wouldn't take this out of possibility, and I wouldn't be surprised if he does just decide to stick to the side he thinks will win the war whilst plotting something of his own. But this still also raises the question of Apu's goals and motivations. Does he want to be on the winning side, or does he just want to dance to the tune of his own music? Yamato's exchange with Drake and Apu continues to increase my investment into Yamato's role for the future of the raid. Since splitting from Momo, Oda's been continuing to surprise me with the plot arc of Yamato's involvement in the war. And apart from this short segment adding a touch of comedy as well as a mini action sequence to raise some speculations about comparative power levels, the real investment for me is in the implications of the numbers chasing Yamato. We discussed the possibility of the numbers being the result of the experimentation conducted on the samurais following our recent introduction to Fuga in Bienzanki. After this chapter, seeing the interest one of the numbers seemed to show in Yamato fuels the fire of what I personally considered was a wild theory. But if this means that the numbers become more involved and integrated into the story in an interesting and meaningful way, I'm all for it, because they sure could use some further development and will definitely give them a bigger purpose in this raid than just being hollow threats. Speaking of threats, the masked CP0 members we have at Onigashima seem to be a lot more formidable than we expected, especially with this CP0 member seemingly either ragdolling a raid participant or using some telekinetic ability. But the masked members are confirmed to be on another level than those members who aren't, which begs the question of whether they're stronger than Lucci, because I've always thought that Lucci would be among the strongest, if not the strongest member of CP0. But the strength of the masked members being explicitly mentioned in this chapter makes me both nervous and excited into the potential clash between the CP0 members against Robin and those who come to protect her. But of course, the real highlight of this chapter is the segment of the development of Sanji's character, which was done again so beautifully in this chapter. We've seen it for a few chapters on Onigashima now, but perhaps none was more clearly and as magnificently done as it was in this chapter. I'll even go on to say that Sanji dealing with his new powers is increasingly becoming the most interesting plotline of this raid. The excitement of where Oda will go from here with Sanji's character once the battle is over, it's one of those things that I really wish just won't be quickly resolved by, say, Sanji somehow gaining perfect control of his emotions, because there's just so many other interesting ways that this storyline could go. Sanji losing his emotions and potentially facing Zoro, whom he asked to kill him, who's currently only able to stand due to the effects of the mink drug. There's just so much dramatic opportunity for this potential clash. Because now that I think about it, it's been a while since we've had a very serious emotional internal conflict within the Straw Hats. And if we were basing it on prior conflicts between these Mugiwara, then I know Oda will absolutely deliver when it comes down to it. Of course, that's just another scenario, and this could be something that's easily addressed, but I just can't help but sit on the idea that this is an amazing recipe for awesome storytelling that could culminate in a classic One Piece scene that's gonna tug on our heartstrings. That being said, the interaction between Zoro and Sanji in this chapter still managed to give you that heartwarming feeling, in an amazing display of trust that they will each beat their respective opponents, and Sanji trusting Zoro with the task of eliminating him should his mind become corrupted, to Zoro trusting Sanji's request and agreeing to it without much hesitation, is just a beautiful showing of low-key brotherly love. Sanji would never ask Zoro this favor if he's sure he's able to control it, and Zoro wouldn't accept it if he doesn't think Sanji knows what he's doing. It's truly a masterful display of how well they know each other despite their differences. Also, in case you missed it, we got an awesome detail that confirms the location of Zoro and Sanji. Sanji was first shown located on the left side of the Skull Dome, and Zoro was seen on the right of the Skull Shell Dome. I simply love this symbolism with Luffy being in the center on the rooftop. If a demon has its horns, then a deity has its wings. Essentially, we have Kaido's horns versus Luffy's wings. I do, however, have questions such as, will this eyebrow change be permanent? And seeing the change in his eyebrows, will Sanji's hair color also change? Because in SBS Volume 87, a fan asked Oda why Sanji is the only one with a natural hair color, to which Oda responded that the hair color of his siblings are the effects of the modification. So with Sanji's modification now activated, should his hair be changed as well? And following the pattern seen with his siblings, will Sanji's hair then be black because of his Germa epithet? Because that will be a case of reverse Super Saiyan. But then a question I have is, since Sanji got out of his raid suit early, could this have paused the process of the modification and therefore won't be extended to affecting his hair? Especially now that he's destroyed the raid suit, which by the way is a pretty damn remarkable thing for Sanji to have done. Not only choosing to give up the power that the raid suit provides, but also letting go of his dream of becoming invisible. Not that I have, but I will never doubt his conviction after this chapter. But in saying that, Sanji was shown seemingly vanishing from Queen's sight, and whether this is the result of Sanji's natural speed or his raid suit abilities now being embedded into his body is unclear, but considering the SFX notes which was used here is the same effects used for other vanishing characters in the past, it's highly likely that Sanji has retained this ability. And whilst on the topic of abilities, we should mention the callback of his attack, Hell Memories, because the first time Sanji used this attack was in Fishman Island, remembering his experiences at Kamabaka Kingdom to channel his frustrations into his attack. But I believe what we've seen in this chapter has a whole different meaning behind it, as we saw with Sanji remembering his experiences with Germa during Whole Cake Island. A particularly horrible reminder for him is his siblings' treatment of women, which completely went against Sanji's code, which makes it all the more horrifying for us with the mystery raised as to what happened between Sanji and the geisha. I am in denial that Sanji harmed her himself, and I think we can't forget that we are in the pleasure hall where Black Maria used illusion tactics not too long ago, not to mention Queen, who we have witnessed to manufacture biomedical viruses in the past, so I don't think this sort of trickery would be outside of the Calamity's range of abilities. Also, Sanji choosing to destroy the raid suit becomes even more meaningful in this way. One of the major complaints people have against Sanji's character is his pervy side, which I would personally say reached a new level at the bathhouse earlier in this arc, so Sanji actively giving up this ability I think indicates a level of purity in Sanji. He values his respect for women over his less wholesome love towards women, which I do appreciate. But what I love most about the part when Sanji is deciding on his course of action was him thinking about what kind of Sanji Luffy will want by his side, and I believe Sanji made the right decision. I'm sure Luffy would prefer to have a companion who stays true to themselves. In my opinion, Sanji chose wisely. In this chapter, we also got two lovely cover pages, the first being the Jump magazine cover featuring Luffy, Momo, and Yamato, and the most interesting thing of this cover were the words that we are in the climax of the raid. So what does that suggest about the raid failing? Well, I'll leave that for you to decide. And another exciting cover page, as we got a color spread of all of the significant second-in-command figures in the series, and it's great to see a Zoro-centric color spread given the Sanji-focused chapter that we got, which in my mind adds to the balancing of these two characters, but also apart from the confirmation of Shiryu being Blackbeard's vice captain and the focus that Beppo received, it also seems to confirm Zoro's status too, and this is timely given a very recent discussion that we've had, and if you haven't checked that video out, I highly suggest you do so. But now that you've heard my thoughts, let me know yours by leaving a comment below. Don't forget to like and share the video, and please do subscribe for more One Piece discussions. You can also join our JoyFlick Discord server where we have fun activities such as a games night which will be held shortly, and you can also become a Patron member for more powers and roles within that server. Thank you to our patrons who help support the channel. This is JoyGirl, and I'll see you again soon.